I'm going to go ahead. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to have everyone here with us today. This year for our training, we have two experts. I'm going to stop for just a second. I'm going to reduce this, and I'm going to go ahead and record so that anyone that is watching will be able to have this later on as well. But we do have two, I know they would consider themselves experts, but I do. They are from the Central Kansas Library System. I have known them for 15 years I have been here and worked with them very closely. This is Gail Santee and Patty Collins, and they have a lot of knowledge about policies. All of you are pretty much aware that as things change, we need a policy for it, because then you can, address issues as they come up. You're not acting after the fact, you're acting proactively, so that you're ready and have a policy in place and can say, yes, we have a policy for that. Just a moment, please. Sometimes we think, well, we have small libraries, we don't necessarily need it, but every library today needs that. You need one for what will you do if you're challenged about a book. So today, these ladies are going to share all the different policies that you may encounter and want to have. So if you give them a round of applause and welcome them.
My colleague Patty always says, we're going to clap for you because you are the real heroes here. And we're always jealous of the work that you get to do. We aren't really librarians anymore. We're a librarian to the librarians, just as your colleagues at Northwest are, but we're jealous that you get to do that work every day. And we know how awesome you are, and we hope that your community recognizes that as well. And we're so happy that you're with us here today.
And if they don't recognize it, just have them call us. We'll vouch for it.
That's right.
So we're really pleased to be here. It's a fidget thing.
It does. This came to me because you were fuzzy. She knew me. I just always wear mine.
Today I'm going to veer slightly from our regular policy presentation because Mary had asked for a little bit of time to delve a little further into some HR policies that you might not have or you might discover that you need. So for our practical learning that we'll do a little bit later in our presentation, we will focus specifically on things that appear on the surface because they say words like staff, director, and board in them, that they appear to be just HR issues, but I think you're going to discover how the crossover is, because that magic word policy, as Gail always says, it's all about the policy. You have to have that piece. And so there are lifesavers on the table because your policy manual actually is your lifesaver. If you discover that you hit something that you don't have a policy for, we call your folks at Northwest. If you can't find them, we're going to introduce you to a resource list that will give you at least the start to take to your board, so you take that time to make that policy fit your situation, get that policy appropriately approved, and get it in your policy book so you're ready for the next time, because you might not be prepared right now. So one of the questions that always comes up, it doesn't matter where we present, there is always the situation where someone says, well, that's not going to happen, I know my community.
Or that will never happen here, we're too small for that.
Just an example of,
yesterday, one of our smaller libraries, they do have 80 people in their town now. That's it. They have 21 is their mill levy, but that raises enough to keep the library open for 10 hours a week because that's all they have left in town. So I see head shaking, you know what I'm talking about. They have a problem. One of their residents is wheelchair bound. That's not the problem. But the resident has been proclaiming far and wide in town that he has bed bugs at home.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah,
Right?
it's okay to make that case. It's okay to say those words.
Yes. Right. Yeah. If you think that doesn't happen in your town, I would recommend you call your county health department, and you'll be really surprised that, oh, yeah, we've got them everywhere in Kansas.
And not will you be surprised, you'll also be really sad.
Yes, yes.
Because you know that's a policy you need. And so we're going to point out some of those things.
Yeah,
as we go along with it.
to get started, how many of you have a policy about pest infestation for customers or a bed bug policy? Right?
No.
Exactly.
But we have a great sample for you to work with, and Gail has taken the time to include a copy of the letter that she wrote to the family with all of the explanation that they need to be able to return to the library. Because, of course, for a period of time, they're not able to be there because it is an environmental situation that
Could damage
your
It's
collection.
going to hit what we
materials.
call the three things, and so we can't give that away yet, because we'll come there. There's always the three things.
Oh, I think we have a good one for the three.
Excellent. We like to train based on scenarios, such as the one I just shared. The truth is, we can't make this stuff up. We don't need to make it up. This is stuff that happens in real life, either in CKLS or out in the library world. Patty's going to have some great resources you may not have considered before, may not know. And yeah, you can't make this stuff up.
I turned it off, on again, but that didn't work this time, but that's okay.
The other thing that's important, you can get up anytime. Hopefully we won't bore you to tears. I know the restroom is right down there. There's treats and snacks. And ask questions as we go along. Don't wait to the end. If you've got a question, jump up and down. We have a slideshow so we stay on track. And this will be available to you afterwards. And Mary's recording.
And Mary already has the slideshow. And there's going to be some slides that we're going to fly through fast because we want to get to some practical examples. And that's okay. You know what? I can walk over and click her. Hey, look at this. Do you want to come over and click?
So our colleague is Liz Duclos. She is our new consultant, but she's already been with us for 1.5 years, and oh boy, the things you learn.
Okay, so I'm going to play in and out of the screen so you can see the screen so I'm standing in front of it. But just for our purposes, where are you coming from today, solo librarians? Okay, 2 to 3 staff. Okay, that's most of you.
That's probably
4 to
right.
8. Okay, and anybody with more than 9? We are all volunteer. All volunteer. Okay. And so you get to put in the solo category. Liz, you can sit in the chair.
I don't want to sit.
Oh, okay, then pull the chair over.
Get yourself cozy.
So, click. This is going to be like, turn that record over. Anybody remember that from your childhood?
C to side B.
So,
Can you see this? Okay, good. So we have policies and we have procedures, and they're not the same thing. Procedures usually do not belong in policies because procedures are how we do a thing.
there are a few exceptions.
Oh, yes.
Bed bug one, that's what
There
we're
it is.
talking here.
Challenged materials is another policy that's going to have some procedure in it. Procedures it could be your step-by-step, or it could be kind of a big picture. But policies, Patty had the audacity to tell somebody that policies were my most favorite thing, and they're not. But I do talk
The
about
way
them
she
a lot.
gets animated about
I
that.
do.
It's
They're
still
important.
fill it out.
And the reason that they're important is for a couple of reasons. It's the number one way that the board communicates with the director and the staff and the community.
And the patrons.
And I think that policies are a safety net for the staff. So you think about some of the library situations that you have, or think about some of the ones we're going to talk about, and frontline staff are often like doing high-wire trapeze acts out there. Without policies, you've got no safety net. The policies are what provide you a safety net. So if you slip and miss the bar, you're going to bounce right out of the net and you're going to be fine. Without a policy, it's not going to be so pretty. Policies, there's only one body, according to the state of Kansas, that can approve policies in the library, and that is your board. They have, in the law, the authority to approve policy. Some boards can be a little bit difficult in the way that they interpret that statute, because they might be the board that says, we're going to take care of all the policies. We don't think that's the best way that that should happen. Policies are best written with the staff or with the director and the board working together. The reason for this is that the board, a real easy example, is who charges overdue fines still? Oh, I love it, I love it. Okay, great. Your board says...
I don't approve, but we do.
That's okay, that's okay.
Really? We're the only ones?
We'll use you as the example.
Oh, okay, there's boys. Thank you.
So we're judging. We're not judging.
We're not judging. Your board says how much they're going to charge for a fine. You know, if it's this kind of item, we're going to charge this much per day. That's policy. Procedure, so they say 5 cents a day. Procedure is how you determine we're going to collect that money. If you've got a 25-cent fine, are we going to demand a quarter? Or are we going to take it in 5 cents per visit? Or are we going to set a child the dusting for 25 minutes? And then that's going to write that fine on. That's what procedure is. Procedure is what we do to get it done, to meet the spirit of the policy. Policies are very broad. Procedures are very specific.
So, you know who writes the policies with all of you and the library board, and that's how they get approved. But our policies always set in stone. They should be living documents. So, I hope that your board, if you're a solo, or if you're the director, that your staff has the ability and the opportunity to go outside that policy for the situation in front of them. You don't want to live in a world of all of the always breaking the policy, but sometimes it's a necessity. And if you don't, you can potentially not just lose the patron, but we think of how quickly the gossip gets around a small town. And if I say, Gail, you're never checking out here again until you give me my $2.28, she's going to go talk to 3 friends who are going to talk to 3 more friends. Did you hear what they're doing at the library? And pretty soon it's wildfire. The other thing that Gail is not a Kansan, and I taught her really, really quickly, that small town Kansas people have very long memories. And it doesn't have to be you. It can be 3 librarians ago.
Or your grandfather. Remember that time you didn't return the book?
3 librarians ago said to some little girl named Gail, I'm sorry, until you bring me back my $2.12, you can't check out. And that just sticks forever. Yeah. And that's unfortunate, but it is part of the world that we live in.
Now, Patty started to touch on it a little bit, and it's that policies are living documents. Okay. And they live to be changed. They need to change with the times. So we have 2 other terms we need to clarify. One is best practices, and one is industry standards. Best practices are less restrictive. Industry standards are kind of something that has been agreed on. This is the way we do it. This is the way we put the call number on the spine of a book. Or this is the way when we're adding items.
Shelf items
right
in this tray.
When we add them to a catalog, these are the things that have to be in there. That's an industry standard. A best practice is generally the way we do things. So if you have the courier, it may not look exactly like your neighbor does, but you have to follow the same kind of steps. You know, you pull the item on the shelf, you check it in, and your integrated library system tells you where it goes and what to do with it, or Share It does. and then you put it in the bag, you zip it up, and you've got to put a label on it.
And if you're not in a catalog, an online catalog world, your shelf list does. Your card catalog that stays behind the list. The special one.
Right.
Yes.
We all have to get from A to Z. So these are the steps that have to happen. It just may look a little different.
You see that last line on this side? Generally unwritten, because they are the things that we know. They're the things that you pass on to the next director or to your staff. And some of it is the way we do it at the Pioneer Memorial Library, or it's the way we do it in Kansas. Because sometimes they're the same things. But that best practices is a statement that we use a lot because it gives a little more teeth to the things that we're asking our member libraries to do.
And we're training them to learn how to do as well.
And then it's not it's really quickly, particularly with new libraries, that they're spewing those words back to us, which is great, because then we know that they have ingrained them into their scripted language of libraries.
Inculcated.
Oh, sometimes she likes to show off her fancy vocabulary. So Gail, how many languages do you know today?
Today, I'm good with one.
Okay, good. Because some days it's 7, some days it's...
Today it's 1.
Okay, so Gail has her days, and so as you'll see.
It's a good thing to know, I won't say. So we know we're talking about really heavy stuff.
We also know we're weird.
And then smile breaks regularly in between. So
because it is sometimes, and that's also the time that before we leave the topic, you can say, okay, you need to go back 3 slides because I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so why do we have policies? What reasons can you think of? I should have made those not knowledgeable.
Well, to me, a lot of it is so you know what to do in a given situation.
Yes, yes. I would tell you also.
I mean, policies reduce ambiguity. That's what
Yes, they do.
Can you tell me which one's like
I'll say this is a safe learning environment. It's okay not to know.
It also gives you freedom. Those are the things within, but I can work within that framework. You can be more free to...
It's the low fence that keeps the good dog inside. Any dog can jump over a low fence, but it keeps them in their comfort zone that way.
Protects the library in case of a situation.
Yes, protects the library. Absolutely. Protects the staff, too. The staff are always your best asset.
And your biggest headache.
They're also where you spend the most money. And even if you're a tiny library, your staff should be the biggest line item in your budget. Because face it, during COVID, the libraries were closed. The books didn't jump up and take care of themselves and get them out to people who needed them. The books don't do anything on their own except sit there. It's the staff that's the most important part of the library. And policies that a board enacts shows the staff that they care. Boards have just a few jobs in my mind. They get money for the library to make sure you've got a building. They hire or fire,
Evaluate and hire.
right, the director. And we say now that they hire an enthusiastic, competent director. We keep adding
Partly will
adjectives.
work too.
Partly works. Yeah, not for me. And they keep the staff safe. And if you've been in the library world for the last 5 to 6 years, you've seen how evident that is. That is an important part.
And boards did not know how to do that, just like we didn't know how to do it. And so during those first few days, Gail was managing our libraries, but also reaching out to her colleagues across the state and saying, this is what we recommend. I'm looking at the other side of the world going, okay, what are the libraries in Japan and China and Seattle and Portland doing? Because
the day before we were.
it was coming our way.
So you came up with really good things here.
That they also inform your community where you're going. Where do you want to be? Now we're going to talk about good policy.
So there is a difference between a good policy and a bad policy. I'll bet that we all have bad policies. I know I inherited some, if there even was a policy.
That's the worst kind of bad policy.
It provides direction to the staff, and equitable is up here because it provides direction to the staff to treat everybody the same. That's a little bit difficult sometimes. A good policy is based in common sense. If you live in a low-income community, say like anybody in central and western Kansas practically, you're not going to charge $1 a day to borrow a DVD. You're just not going to do it. You're not going to charge your patrons for every interlibrary loan and make them pay postage. Places do this. It just doesn't make sense. That's not providing what your community needs. That policy, while a good policy in Portland, Oregon, does not fly where we are. Policies are easy to understand. They're not filled with library jargon. They're not going to say ILS and ILL and share it and
ALA.
ASL.
Right.
They're going to be nice, simple English. I have a military background, and they taught us to write at a 6th grade level because most everybody can understand that. The reason that I think that they need to be not filled with jargon is it's easier for us as librarians to understand, but more importantly, it's easy for us then to communicate that to our staff or to our patrons directly. Very important. And conforms with existing laws, and that's why policy needs to change. In the Kansas Public Library Trustee Manual,
The most exciting.
yes, they say that trustees need to know library law, local, state, and federal. I honestly have never had a trustee who knew all that stuff. They look to their technical expert, who is the librarian. You don't have to know it all either, because you have the wonderful people at Northwest. They know it, or they know where to find out and share that with you. But every policy really kind of needs to be vetted with a legal eye now, because we live in such a litigious society, which is sad, but it's how it is.
So, but that, it's, we don't want to know what to do, or Gail let me do it, because once you start that ball rolling, and so, but it still allows you to make those
Personalizations.
personalized. The last one is where someone may work. It helps in the immediate face-to-face crisis. And that crisis could be a pandemic. And that crisis can also be someone was walking out your door and put their finger in the door. Okay? They might not be hurt. They say they're just fine, but you gotta have something to stand on, and you don't know what to do next because you don't have it written down anywhere else. But clarifies confusing situations. So, okay, Gail, ready?
Okay.
This is just a reminder. And this, right now we're on good policy. So, Gail helps lots of libraries write policy for different situations. I'm going to give an example of a substandard policy.
Haha. We're starting early.
What if I remember what? Committee, because put it out there, post it on their Facebook. That's that. Anyone over the age of 12 may visit the library.
Over the age of 12 may visit the library.
During this time of shuttered doors or whatever. First, we can open a little, Our doors were allowing people in, the social distancing, minimum numbers, all of the things. And it said, the library will pursue this over the age of 12. Now, okay, so I am not.
We're both previous children's librarians, so you could see our hair catch on fire when you saw that.
She got a screenshot and a message long before she was up one morning. Because I kept her late at night, I could pay. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Can they be down here? Sure. But any one of us can. And Tyler was more likely to look at it going, I feel good. Than the employee who goes, I don't know if I don't feel good. And just go back to work. And
So they were thinking that adults are less likely to get sick. Adults will follow the rules and not touch things. But that magical word, ethical, never even came into their mind. And the word equitable. Here's the thing about a policy. There's only one policy you have specifically for children, and that is an unattended child policy. Right? All the other customers' policies or patron behavior policies, they apply to every patron age 0 to pre-grade. It's the same policy. You can't pick on someone by their age. You can't sort them out. These librarians were very compassionate. They would never have done this if they didn't have someone saying, "Oh, hold on a minute. Here's what you're doing." Right. Right. So that confusing situation was made worse. So when you write good policy, this is, if you remember nothing else, don't reinvent the wheel. Libraries of all sizes have existing policies. We're going to show you our database, data bank, whatever it is, tons and tons of policies, probably most of the policies you'll ever need. You can download them as Word. You don't have to retype them. You don't have to start from scratch. A lot of them have insert your library name here kinds of policies, right? And nearly all of them have been vetted by legal counsel somewhere. And what we've found also, we have librarians say, we've got this situation, and I'll say, what does your policy say? And we don't have one. Let's look and see. We don't have one either. For an example, so we'll write a new one. Go ahead. Oh.
That was the time we were use any language because we were allowed for a child in high school may actually have never obtained vocabulary beyond that. And so she has a 6th grade example, I have a 4th grade example. That's fine. This is enforceable.
Yes, the board can have the loftiest ideas about what their library is meant to be in the community, but if it's not realistic, it won't work. Do you have a story? That you do. Oh,
Do you know okay. Battle with a young lady, 14 years old. Every single day, walked over to the wall of the children's. Sit down on her bottom and put her feet up on the wall. So her feet are sticking up. Okay. She's taken off her shoes and socks. And she's got her feet on the wall. And so every day she gets one of the children's people to walk over and say, please put your shoes on. I never said a word about it. Because I'm not going to school. The shoes bad, I was bad. At least it's okay. So I'm the staff member who wrote the Cardinal Rule policy. Then what makes the things she said?
our policy says,
Your policy doesn't say that. You have to say those words. And this staff member was not fully educated on how to enforce the policy. very intelligent and very determined young lady. Marched up to my desk, you know, whatever they were playing. And she goes, why do I have to wear this? You probably see this. Ever had your own. And I said, she says, that may be their sentence policy. And I said, well, actually, and when I heard that interaction, I went like this. Really read for not really a good idea. That was one thing I could change it to a person. So the policy as under kids under the age, and it says shirt and shoes must be worn at the time of the library.
What did it say about pants?
But
So that would be the person in the wheelchair who has had surgery on one foot and it's wrapped up so big, that there's no way they're gonna fit a shoe on there. They would be violating policy if they came in the library. What about the baby in arms with no shoes? They would be violating policy.
so. We were. The wall. Gold supported capital, put the wall up. And, you know, I would be honest with you, sometimes I hope they would have to fix it. I would hope that I would get the tables out, but I'm gonna be wrong. And that's why we told mothers to put their little ones in the control. And sometimes that, this Patty had a twin underneath each one, which was all an example or something that is not very important. Because she wasn't wrong.
And it is a good idea to wear shoes.
But she could have. Any number of people are that way. Walker, wheelchair, crutcher, all of them.
Using a computer, shoes kicked off, lots of reasons.
And so it showed me how weak the was. But then my perspective is you're willing to go. And that's the part of it. And so basically I didn't deal with it. I said, if you're not wearing your shoes, you can be honest with it can't be where walking by my 6 years old and they get the smell of their life. It's not very good because that's in our family. That's what the important.
When you write a policy, understand what you need for this policy to do. What are your goals? What do you have in mind? Do your research. That may be calling Northwest and saying, hey, I don't know what the legality of this is. Can you look into it and let me know? Ask other librarians. Do you have a policy like this? The next step is the most important. Policies are awesome, but if they sit in a red binder behind the desk, and that's the end of it, it's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. As a librarian, take time to train yourself and anybody else who works in the library with you or even volunteers on those policies. And that may be in this stinky foot instance with the shoes. What are we gonna say? And if Liz says it and I say it and Patty says it, it's one of our favorite things is scripted language. But what that means is that no matter who we have to interact with on the shoes off in the library, they're hearing a consistent message all the way through. That gives us strength. Because the patron can't come and say, Miss Patty, let me take my shoes off, but Miss Liz is a meanie and she won't.
But I'm gonna walk over them. When I make feel I'm walking straight over to tell me what I told her and the same conversation with her. Because I don't want whether that's you know, I love people or you're a big meanie.
Right.
Why don't you tell me what she does? Because it's just it's not necessary. But training that is the key. And if you don't ever expect it to happen, then it's just
Right. And with training staff, You would never have someone new come in and they're going to answer the phone without telling them how to answer the phone. Do we just pick up the phone? Wait, you know, in your library, maybe you say, this is a Great Bend Public Library. Gail speaking, how may I help you? Maybe you don't say your name. You know what your standard is, and you train them on that. That way, anybody who calls the library gets the same message.
You probably remember the word something, but we can change that to our meeting now, resolution, to say, any conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And it has been updated, you take that one back to work with that week, you go ahead and stretch the words that you know are the next thing. But public health crisis, I'm thinking, well,
Measles. Right.
But, you know, that's all a lot, but, you know.
We have a good reference down here. Adrienne Juarez has a podcast called Library Leadership Podcast, about 15 to 20 minutes, lots of different topics. Not too technical. You certainly won't fall asleep. How are we doing? How are you feeling? Are we all tracking together? Okay. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And we are also available to you after, and we provide our information. It's pretty common after we give one of these for you to be on your way home and something happens, or you open the door tomorrow and something big happens. You can call and say, I don't remember exactly what you said, but tell me about it.
And if you want.
Yes.
Your label, because they might have,
Mhm.
and you want to have that any other. And if you do have something that you want to ask, Blackberry them during the break or whenever staff will make sure that they know what your question is. Will be able to share.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
What I mean by that is you don't wield your policy like a weapon. That's not the first weapon you pull out of the holster and say, it's because our policy says so. You're going to want to think, and here's why you need to train and practice on it, because if we've got somebody in our face, we're not always thinking, we're reacting. But so you don't want illnesses from we want to take care of you. That's also. It's not just.
And from our side,
It's your life.
from our side, we don't want to pay for it.
Mhm.
We have to reason on our side as well. We are protecting the interest of the land,
Mhm.
but as I said, we're also protecting our future. In this case, they're not.
Good?
Yep.
Okay. I jumped the gun and then I was like, well, maybe I'm not the mind reader I think I'd like to be. One of the things that's important about policy, and we touched on it earlier, is it needs to be legally enforceable. This is Northwest Kansas, so I bet y'all it might be just a bit more liberal in this area. How many of you have policies that say no guns, no weapons in the library? Okay, I see it has some hands raising and shaking. That policy is illegal. That policy needs to change because how many years ago? 8, 9, 10? Wow. Oh. right? The Kansas legislature was really keen on changing the laws for concealed and open carry weapons in public. And at one point, they even had rewritten legislation, luckily it did not, that said you could carry blades like machetes openly into libraries or into any other place. And that if you didn't put these steps in place, people could open or conceal carry. And those steps were really not realistic. You had to have an armed guard on the site all the time. You had to have magnetic. Yeah, and you know those magnetic things. Right. Yes. Yes. Right. By the library. Right, exactly. But so that's a policy that needs to change. We have ways to discourage people from carrying weapons into the library if that's what our board decides they want to do, but you can't prohibit it. Of what? Right. So if it were legal in Kansas still to have a no weapons in the library display, and someone had a bunch of awesome Civil War artifacts, and some of those was a long sword, a cavalry sword, and an officer's sidearm, okay, it's violating the policy. But those were an important part of it. Right. So you can see that we've only talked about weapons here, but there are a lot of other things that you think about. You betcha. That's right. Or weather. We have weather. It's bad for the collections. Right. Number 3 is important. When I look around the room, you all look just like I do. And so it's not something that comes to my mind at the front thinking, oh, would this policy be discriminatory? But the sign on the door that kept children out of the library on number 3, it wouldn't pass, right? Okay, so is the policy measurable? That's, I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that, but I can run with it. So is it measurable? Is it something that we can actually say, yes, this works, or no, it doesn't? If the board approves a policy that the staff have to constantly break to provide good customer service to your community, yes, it's measurable in a very bad way. And then the staff can, or just you, then you can take that to the board and say, here's why this needs to change.
Go back with my
Or
first.
Liz.
On number 2, the word I added, those are penalties reasonable.
Sure.
Story time.
Yeah, or you know, you have the teen that's acting badly in the library. Is it reasonable, first time they've ever had an offense, to say, you're banned from the library for a year? No.
And actually, she told my story. Real situation. Last library, 13-year-old kid, everyday library user for his time to play. What was the block game before Roblox?
Minecraft.
Still a thing.
And then what was before that?
I'm too young.
RuneScape.
RuneScape, yes, every day. And as someone said, I don't agree with the policy, but I still have to enforce it. I was stuck in that world a lot. But this particular kid, I mistakenly went to supper one evening, and my director was in the building, And this young man decided to veer off of RuneScape and went to, I don't know, look at some porn. And he was in the children's department. There was not another soul there. Okay? He went out, found some porn, got reported by another library staff member. Again, I was at supper. My director came out. She looked at the child, and she said, "You're out of here for a year." Truly. And I said, I came back and I said, okay, wait a minute. I know this, I mean, I have lived 4 or 5 years with this kid, you know, all the way up to being that 8th grader that smells so wonderful with me. And he would near the line, but he'd never crossed it before. And this, he didn't have sense enough to do it when there was nobody in the department. It just happened to be the Shelter Avenue walking by and caught the screen. Okay, was he supposed to be there? No, we know that. That wasn't the issue. It was how she took the situation. And I said, okay, wait a minute. This kid is going to have to come in and choose book for his AR goals. We were still in that little bit. His AR goals, which I happen to know by looking at the calendar that he's going to have that book sometime in the next 2 weeks. So she reasoned with me and finally came to a situation where in the letter that she wrote that said, such and such needs to be accompanied by a parent or guardian over the age of 18 at arm's length away every time he visits the library for the next calendar year. Now, who is that punishing? Mom and Dad. And she was hot. She came in to talk to me, and I looked at her and I said, you were already at the top. I said, there's only one other place to go. If you want to take it to the board, that's entirely up to you. Here's the board list. Here's when the next meeting is. You can take it up if you want. She chose to not. And I had a countdown calendar for the last month till he could come back in. Because I knew at the day, at 3:55 p.m., that kid was going to walk in the door, and he walked in like clockwork. Good. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to behave. And I said, I never doubted one bit.
I think a year ban is for when you're setting stuff on fire, not when you've had a slip in judgment.
Or masturbating in the library.
Yes, there's that too.
Also happened. But that's for a whole other day, unless you want to talk about it.
We're not going there, honey.
Well, I can tell about meth later, too.
Oh, yes.
I know all the stories.
So there, remember I talked about those 3 things that you're going to need to know, and Patty mentioned one of the things. But legally, there are 3 reasons that you can ban someone from the library. 3. These will hold up all the way to the Supreme Court, and they have. The first one, you'd think, now what is that? Preventing a library staff from doing their job. Now that can be the child, the autistic child who follows you around. My favorite is, my favorite autistic child said, I have a cat, my cat likes milk. Do you have a cat? It was, I have a cat, I have a cat, I have a cat, I have a cat.
Miss Gail,
And they would
do
follow
you
me
sleep at the library? What is your nightgown look like?
Yes, blue, it's blue, my nightgown's blue. But preventing the library staff from doing their job. If I wouldn't have known how to manage that child, it would have fallen under number 1. But number 1 is also the creepy patron staring at me the whole time I'm at the desk. And when I'm pushing the library cart to shelves, they're following and looking. I see a lot of smiles. Everybody knows a creepy patron.
It doesn't matter if your library is half this size. You always know where they are because you know they know where you are.
Right. It could also be the grandma who comes in with all their grandchildren's photos in your
Would you like to see a video she learned how to walk this morning?
We know that, it's creepy patron aside, the grandma with all the photos and the child who's constantly talking to you, those aren't really good reasons to ban someone from the library. They are keeping the staff from doing their job, but not so great.
Can you manage it?
Right. I'm sorry?
I said, can you manage that?
Yes, can you manage that? Is that an annoyance or is it not? Preventing others from using the library, this can be odor. And when I say odor, what's the first thing you think about? Not the middle school kids. It's someone who doesn't have good hygiene or someone who doesn't have a place to live with running water. But it's also that lady that walks down the aisle in church, the perfume is so strong that you have a headache the whole rest of the service. Or a rancher who comes in with something on their boots. It could also be the person who's talking really loud in the middle computer and everybody else is looking at them, but they don't see it. And they're talking to the IRS. Well, it's going to get loud. You know? And destruction of property, I don't even need to talk about that. That's where, if you want to set things on shoes, if you want to set things on fire, you're out. Okay, that's destruction of property. That can also be throwing rocks and breaking plate glass windows.
It can be on your third day of your first library job when you're all of 23 years old and you just accidental librarian and the kid, fifth grader, he crab walked up the stacks, you know.
I always wanted to do that.
And, but our stacks were not secured to the ceiling. And I saw them moving and I flew out from behind the front desk and I went, oh, wait. And I told the kid he had to leave for the day. And then I shrieked as I walked up to the assistant director and I said, I made a kid leave. And they said, what were they doing? And I told her, and she's like, okay. And I'm like, because I thought I was going to get fired. She's like, no. She says, that fits under the reason.
Right. So the reason that I say that these are enforceable all the way up to the Supreme Court is actually there was a Supreme Court case, Kramer versus the Bureau of Police for Morristown, all the way back in 1991. And the legal counsel for the American Library Association has said this to us numerous times, and I am very confident and trust her legal interpretation of that for us.
And if ever you want to see it, I have it saved on my desktop. It's about 60 pages if you want to read the whole book.
Again, having trouble sleeping?
But the person who was experiencing homelessness won the case and was awarded enough to buy a home. And
my library could never have afforded that. My library was in financial hurt for years.
And he wasn't speaking for anyone but himself. But subsequently, we know that to the point that there was a book written about the Librarian's Guide to Homelessness. If you've never read it, it's by Ryan Dowd. He does the Ryan Dowd training that we had through the State Library for a long time. This is the best customer service training manual I've ever seen. I've been lucky enough to teach customer service to former staff and to librarians, and he teaches you how to be safe, he teaches you how to be smart, he teaches us how to follow, whether it's your policy or the law.
And what to say. Yeah, that's great. So, I'm just going to assume, looking out at all of you, you have all the policies you need. They're all legal and they're modeled.
Oh, yes.
Because I know, I've heard so much about you. I know that's the case. Then you have to review them. Remember we said that policies are living documents. You just can't put them in the red binder and that's that. A good rule of thumb is that your policy should be reviewed every year. A best practice says, why don't we take and review a third of the policies each year, and that way then in 3 years we will have reviewed all of them. And when I talk about policy review, I often say, and update. Because sometimes you don't have to change anything, but sometimes you need to change a little bit of the language or whatever. Your policy also needs the date on it. It needs the date and a signature. Or in lieu of the signature, in the board minutes, it says that this policy was reviewed and updated on this day. Your board chair can appoint a committee, and that committee of 3 does all the review. Most often, they say, okay, these are the policies we're going to review this year. We've got 5 of them. The first one we're going to review is this. I want you to, as board members, I want you to read it. I want you to make notes, come prepared to discuss it, and then you talk about it at the next meeting, and there may be changes or not. Yes, ma'am.
I made just a table that has all of the policies, and then when they were written, when they've been updated, and the next, what the last update is, and then you can highlight what you need.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's helpful
I
to group
that's
like
very
policies
helpful.
together.
But in central Kansas, the libraries aren't quite as organized as that.
Well, I had to because of the study.
It's huge, and it's an ongoing job, and no board likes to do it. But if you think you've got people going off the board every year, and you've got people coming on the board every year, it gives them, at every stage of their tenure on the board, practice with different policies. Okay? Don't hesitate as a librarian if you learn today that there's a policy you need that you don't have, no matter where your board is in that cycle, to bring it to the board.
Gail is sometimes psychic. She knows where we're going next. Click.
I'm this one, I'm the sideways. And I'm smart.
And she was so perfectly hooked, and then there's a Gail.
There are necessary policies that every library should have. I'm not going to read these through, but I want you to read them through and say to yourself, oh, I've got this one, or oh, I don't. Patty, did I make this list up?
No, well, luckily she didn't. But some of the policies she did make because she could not find a quality example that fit Kansas Library. One of those is the fourth from the bottom one that says holiday decorations policy. It also applies to the
Bulletin boards and bulletin boards.
and it can also apply to, you can move to the next step of programming. Because if you, again, children's librarian, if I'm doing Halloween story time in the place of my usual Tuesday story time, I may have families who choose not to come back till the end of the season. Because if she's doing Halloween, she's probably going to do Thanksgiving and Christmas, and what's it going to be after? So it's those making a decision. So the last place I was, I said, now we have a Halloween party / story time after school where anybody can come. My staff didn't want that because there'd be too many kids there. And I'm like, well, you got a choice. We either have one or we don't. This is how we're going to do it. Gail had to write one to include that.
Well, and holiday decorations is more than just that. In our policy, it talks about what's allowed and what's not. And so we talk about Christmas trees are allowed, and stars and snowmen, but we probably shouldn't have angels. Because not everybody else is the same that I am. Easter is springtime generally. Chicks are okay and eggs are okay. But the rest probably isn't. And the reason that we think about that is that we are publicly funded, and with the money they so generously give to us, they also place their trust in us. And they trust us to serve not just one person in the community, but the whole community. And as Patty always says,
If you convince yourself that you know everybody in your community, you're fooling yourself. You can make a lot of bold statements that you don't even realize are isolating a single person or a whole group of people. We don't know how behind their doors they eat, love, pray, believe, vote. Those are all things that are private to us. And I always throw the example out when I ask a group of people, I said, do you believe anybody in your community is food insecure? Or do you believe anybody in this room was ever food insecure as a child? Well, I know the 3 people standing in front of you at times were. And that's the reminder. We are capable, competent, educated women, but we did come from meager beginnings, and we've come beyond that. But I can't look at you and find out which one of you waited for the commodities with the cheese, the rice, and the beans. Or my mother was too proud to take anything, so
Yeah.
fish sticks and 29-cent generic macaroni and cheese is what we ate.
In the white box.
In the white box that you wrote on with a grease pencil at the grocery store. That's right.
We can't know, and what we can celebrate in our own homes is different than what we celebrate in public. And that includes the holiday decorations. Is how do we decorate the library? And what do we put up on our bulletin boards? It's important.
Now, is that,
Gail. She gets to be the dumb blonde.
I get to be the dumb one, isn't that impeding on staff's First Amendment rights?
It actually isn't, because libraries are limited access forum?
They are limited public forums.
Limited public forum. And so if you have someone who comes in and wants to do a First Amendment audit, and I don't know if does everybody know what that is? Okay, that's what I was going to say. So there are, in some places, some very angry citizens who want to make their cause known elsewhere and around the world. And so one of the things that they do is they bring in a video camera and they go everywhere and they follow you and they get in your face and they ask hard questions and they'll follow your patrons around in the library. And then
Do you think
they
your
want
tax dollars are being well used in your public library?
They're very confrontational, and then
Kind of
they want you to
One
react.
person using 8 computers, is that viable for our tax dollars?
Right, they're going to be very confrontational. They want you to react. They want you to call the police. They want to catch you slipping up so they can post it on their YouTube channel and monetize it. Okay, that's essentially what it is. It's a waste of time. It's sad, but it's a waste of time. So, golly, where were we going with this?
We're circling back.
We're going to circle back. Oh, you asked a question.
She asked a
Right, that's
question.
right.
I have this magic thing called the internet in my pocket. And the stories that you've heard today, one we told you wasn't in our library, the rest of them have been my life. But I also grab things off the internet. I follow a few really good Facebook groups. One of them is a library management group. One of them is a library employee network group because it's the other side complaining. But just 2 days ago, hi all, I'm a youth services manager at a public library and I have a library assistant who continues to give me grief about our teen collection, grade 7+. She first wanted to put warning labels on books with more adult, in quotes, content. I explained to her that it's not our job to put labels on things, and that is a form of censorship.
It's also expensive.
That's a whole other day. We'll come back to that. She continues to give me grief and wants only clean books for teens. This is nonsense, and I'm honestly pretty fed up at this point. I've offered her the chance to create a book list with cleaner titles, but she is just not understanding what the role of library staff is. I'm concerned she may be making remarks to parents and kids about the collection, which is balanced and diverse, I assure you. I'm worried that she's making comments she should not. Does anyone know of a good article that explains why our job as librarians is to be acting as a librarian, not as a parent when they walk into the public library? Our library policy backs me up, but she won't give it a rest. I know that some of that YA stuff is pretty intense, but still. Thanks in advance. And this is the string of helpful messages she received. And you can see there's a lot of that great big A because they're referring to the American Library Association's policy allowing minors to use the library.
So A holiday decorations policy does not infringe on an employee's First Amendment rights. Employees, if they should be so lucky as to have their own desk that is brought in a public space, they may certainly put up items of religious importance or other holiday importance there. Okay? If you don't have a policy on discussing politics in the workplace, they may also put up items of political note as well. Okay, so let's assume that Patty and I vote very differently. Our desks are in the front of the library right there. It would not, and we have a good policy, employee policy. We could put up our own political views and cause a whole lot of trouble in our community and diminish the public trust in the library as a neutral organization. We could also create a lot of animosity between ourselves, which is not good for the community, it's not good for the patrons. And so this is an instance where having a good personnel policy comes into play as well. One that is often interesting to me is the disposal of surplus property. So when we have books that have long lived their life cycle, we know what to do with them. Sometimes we throw them away, sometimes they get recycled, sometimes we sell them. But I've been in libraries where that's what the whole bottom shelf is, because the library can't get rid of them. What do we do with them? When I first came to the Central Kansas Library System, we had what I called a junk heap. It was every broken stapler or lamps that hadn't worked for 20 years. Nobody was empowered to throw that stuff away, so they couldn't do anything. Plus, they were really keen on property stickers. Like anything over $30.
Every chair.
Every chair.
Every chair in this room.
An automatic stapler. Just all kinds of things. 3-hole punch. Yeah, 3-hole punch. So you couldn't get rid of it because there wasn't a policy that said what to do. Because if someone would have taken it upon themselves and gotten rid of that, they actually could have been in a lot of trouble.
Because it's public property.
Public property, right. Broken phones from 20 years ago in the heat.
That's why you see your school district will, sometimes will do a yearly auction or a sale, because those items have been officially withdrawn from their inventory, and this is their public sale to give the whole community an opportunity to get a little bit of their tax dollars back. And remember,
they have
there's
a
a 20
policy.
mil that you have to pay for just to have school.
Right. And so your board may determine that right now you have really good sense as a library. You're not going to throw away a piece of antique furniture that is about $500 or more. But the next librarian who comes in may not understand the importance of that piece of furniture. It's just an old piece of junk to them and they get rid of it. So often there's a dollar amount. Yes?
I wanted to bring up something I know a lot of us are struggling with, and that's the idea of who is able to obtain a library card. And there's backstory on it. You know, 10 years ago, somebody from Enid, Oklahoma wanted a library card because they drove through once a year. What do we care?
Right.
When they're visiting grandma, they check out books, etc. But with digital collections, that library card becomes so much more expensive
Yes.
that we don't want someone from, you know, way out of our area obtaining a card, and then we have to pay for it.
So you're
Right.
talking like a service like Hoopla or...
Exactly.
Yes, because we know how expensive they are.
You know, our
But
books,
that's
I mean, you know, when we buy a book, they come to, sure.
Right.
So the power behind a library card has really changed.
Yes, it has. And so we need to think about our policies now. The system is funded on a tax that is placed on those people within your territory who are so rural they don't pay a tax to support a local library. That's how the system gets their money. So that's why if I live in a different county and I come to your library, but I live within the Northwest Territory, you give me a free card.
That's what we tend to do,
Right?
yes.
But if I live in Colorado or in Norton, not Norton, Phillipsburg on the other side, or to the south, you're not required to do that.
But my grandma lives in your town and I visit her every Sunday.
That might be different.
Summer.
Right, that might be different.
You also get people who are employed in your town
Yes.
that do not live there.
But we have, and I'm sure that you do too, people with an actual physical address in Nebraska. They live physically in Nebraska, but their mailing address is in Kansas still. You know, so your policy, your card holder policy, it needs to be updated.
And that's a local board decision. That's
Yes.
what you guys need to make that decision for your community. If you're putting the money into Canopy and or Hoopla or something like that, that's something you need to look at. But you could get them maybe a state library card. They could get cloud library.
Right?
You can also give them a temporary card, which we
Yes.
Yeah.
do. Because I had an experience where my sister had cancer, and I went to a library, and they said, you can't use our library unless you demonstrate that you live here. So I had to go home, write an envelope, send it in, and then I came to the post office, delivered it, and said, I said, here I am.
Right.
Did you really need that hassle?
Yes.
I know.
It's ridiculous. So we're here to serve people, and when people have those kind of needs or those
We are compassionate human beings. Our policies should allow us to be compassionate human beings.
We don't need to give away the farm,
No.
but we need to understand that we're here as active service. We are here to help people and provide access to information.
That's
How are you
my
denying
community.
access by not allowing people to get a library card? What if they don't have a home address?
In the form, in the case of digital content, I don't know if anybody in this room is sharing Netflix or HBO Max or any of those, but you're starting to get, hey, this is out of your service area. You can't share it with your neighbor in North Carolina or California. My brother came to spend a summer when we first got the Kansas library card, and he was driving across the state. And he went to the local public library, they gave him a Kansas library card because he could prove that he lived here at that point. But he had the library card for 3 years till it expired because he was still accessing Kansas content when he left. We know that when they leave the state, they can still access the content.
Sometimes
But-
now they
But
can't.
now, it's doing the geolocation. If you're outside of the space and you have some of those provisions now that you can make in some of those services, and so then you can choose.
And another thing that goes along with what you said, that your board needs to be aware of, is what is the policy of the system? Are they paying for the digital service entirely? And that means then that anybody who lives within your geographical region gets access to it. Or are you paying for it extra, so only people in your town get it? These are good conversations to have long before you need a policy.
And honestly, think about if you're living in fear that you have one person that may come in and abuse it. One out of how many others that you could possibly find.
Yeah.
So how do you go about issuing a temporary card?
So what,
We have an expiration date.
yeah, you
You
can
manually-
it.
Yeah.
And we have different numbers, library card numbers for those people, and we say your card will be good for three months or 6 months or
Right.
whatever.
And then you
we
can
put an
also-
expiration date on it.
And then you're also, because
They don't get
you
it.
can also because they may have a special list of numbers, you can also limit what they have access to.
It depends on your ILS that you can set the date.
And that's your
when
check-in,
that
check-out
expiration
system.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, doesn't matter if it's electronic or on paper,
Right?
but you can say someone who's living in XYZ shelter, because that's what they provide as the real address, then you know that length of time is no more than 180 days, so that's what you give it to them for. Or in some cases, to issue a temporary card, a library will request that they check out the first 2 items, return those properly within their designated due period, and then their numbers get increased. And it can also be, they can only check out physical print items, they can't check out electronic items. And that's
There are lots of ways to
Good.
make that happen.
And you can talk with Hoopla or Canopy or whoever and see who can limit it by that. But again, you have to look at
Who's
your
paying
system,
for it.
who's paying for it, and if you can limit it.
Right. Lots of stuff to think
People are
about.
limited to 5 a month.
And that's because it's spending.
Right.
And that 5 fits the budget. Yep. Sadly, that 5 also includes people like me who, I don't think I've read that. I check it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I did read it, and I have to hand it back.
We've hit on most of these.
Right,
Emergency closing,
Facility use is one we didn't talk too much about, but
and we did talk about service animals, and so service animals seem to be that other sticky wicket.
yeah.
So,
How many of you have patrons who bring animals into the library as service animals?
How many as emotional support animals?
how many just bring their animals? Walmart in Great Bend is dog heaven. If you like puppies,
Yeah.
there's always lots for you to
And the reason is because they don't have a good policy and they're afraid they're going to get themselves in trouble by saying, no, you can't bring your animal in. Right. What they've not done is they've not done the research and they've not trained their staff to know what to say.
So what about if they're wearing a coat and carry a card, Gail?
They're wearing a coat and carrying a card.
They're wearing a little coat that says, I...
Oh, the puppy. The puppy is wearing a coat.
She had a big lunch. I don't know what you're going to get in the next 16 minutes.
Right. The deal is you can buy the coat anywhere. Anybody can knock together a card. So you need to do your research on that, and we have a policy for you. Oh, let's get to the good stuff. This is so true. See, this is just a blessing.
Okay,
Okay, here we go.
Mary asked for some hard stuff. We're going to kind of fly through the sections to get to some
But
examples.
we know this is really text-rich.
And it is on purpose, because, as we said, the biggest expense are people. Job descriptions. You don't have to raise your hand, but I bet you some of you know that you don't have one.
Or if you have one, it doesn't really talk about what you do.
That would be mine. And that's okay.
Because next week, we're writing
It's a
it.
growing document.
They need to be reviewed by the people who actually do the job every year. It's a living document that does need updating. It reflects the actual work being done. That's where we have to update Patty's. And you've asked for the employee, because the employee will also say, well, you had me add this, so I don't do that anymore. Anytime you're having trouble with an employee and you call me, the first thing I'm going to say is, what does their job description say? If you, as a library director, are having trouble with your board, or out of the blue they give you a poor evaluation, you need to make sure that that job description is up to snuff. How many of you get an annual evaluation from your library board? Okay.
Or your director. If you have
Or your director if you have more staff. That's something that we recommend. But the first step is that job description. We have some of those too. So if you've got an employee, like the situation you read about,
Uh-huh.
okay?
The person who
And
wants
they
clean
were
books.
to reach out to me, the first thing I would say is, what does their job description say? How have their evaluations been in the past? How has their performance been in the past? Have you trained them? Do they know what's appropriate to say to a patron across a desk? Have you trained them, and do they understand that this is a profession with real ethics? Have you trained them? Because up to this point, if you're answering no to these questions, we have to start all the way back at the top. Otherwise, you don't have a leg to stand on. The reason that even if you're the only one, you want a job description is because your board, you're solo, your board may say, okay, well, I've heard that damn Gail Sandy talking, and we're going to start doing evaluations. And they give you a bad evaluation based on something that is not even what you do.
It's like rubbing the puppy's nose in something they did on your carpeted floor, but they did it this morning and you just got home from work. They don't make the connection.
Right.
We're human beings. We're just like animals. I don't know what I did. Why are you telling me I'm bad about it now?
Right. And as a supervisor, as a manager, I don't believe that an employee should hear at the end of the year about something they did in January. That's unfair.
If I didn't tell you in January as a manager, that's my problem.
Yes.
If you continued the behavior and I still haven't told you, then I've made a bigger problem for both of us.
Right, right. Performance review is important. A performance review is not a grade. It's not a pass-fail or an A to F grade. A performance review is an opportunity for communication between the board and the librarian, or between the librarian and other staff members. It is not a grade. Wage increases should not be tied to performance reviews as well, because the cost of milk goes up whether I've had a bad month or whether I've had a good month. The milk still goes up. We still need to pay for it or to purchase milk. Does that make sense? Many people without a clear understanding think that if you get a ding on your review, you don't need a raise. Most of us here don't regularly get raises anyway, but there we go.
Okay, you got 10 minutes. You got
Okay, I got a raise. We talked about the other stuff too much. So when we talk about human resources, we also talk about how much money you're making and what the benefits are. Most of you here probably don't have benefits. Some of you, if you're lucky, you may have papers, correct? Yeah. Most of you probably don't make $20 an hour either. You can still have benefits. Those are the benefits that you're required to legally get, Social Security, workers' compensation. We don't usually think those are benefits, but they are. But you can also negotiate with your board for a paid day off, or part-time on Saturday instead of full-time. Those are things that you can negotiate that are benefits without dollars exchanging hands. That's important to know, that you have that power to bring to the table, to barter for yourself.
Just like any other business, libraries have to follow state and federal laws.
How many people who do story time are going to cut out the circles at night while you're watching Wheel of Fortune? Okay? Everybody? You should not be doing it. You're providing free labor. That needs to happen at work. The reason is that if she spent 15 years cutting out circles of an evening, and for whatever reason I need to let her go, she can claim back wages and she will win, and the library will lose.
Because I will have story time children walk in and say, you have the duck that Miss Patty put
That's
out
right,
at night. In 1993.
The Department of Labor actually has really good and clear help on this stuff. There are
These all came from this book, The Crash Course in Public Library Administration. It's really old, but
still good.
It gives you some basics.
You need to have those labor law posters posted in your library.
And they're on
And you don't need to buy them.
There's a link on the end of our slideshow for you to go find and print them out.
They're free. You just print them out and put them up on your bulletin.
They don't have to be in color.
Right.
They don't have to be plain black and white color.
The board determines the employee's benefits, if you're getting any, but you've got a little bargaining power. remember what I said. You can negotiate for some paid time off. You may or may not have insurance. If your library has one full-time employee and that person gets health insurance, but the part-time people don't, you must have an employee handbook. Otherwise, you are a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Ours won't look like this. This is for a staff of 13 with a legacy of over 60 years old, but it has our employee policies.
It should still have what happens when we retire. Your employee handbook should talk about what we do when we have an open position, what we're going to do as we walk through to hire someone, and how we're going to do that in a way that is that whole fancy word equitable across the board again. Now, the board hires the director. They hire the director to manage the day-to-day running of the library. That means that the director then should hire anybody else. That's hard sometimes for boards to swallow, but that's how it
The
should.
board determines exactly how many total hours and how much money is going to be spent.
Right.
Okay, Gail, it's lightning round time. She has never heard some of these. I have a coworker who keeps scheduling time off for when we have big events planned. We are a team of 2, so often I'm left with no support to run these events. My supervisor keeps approving his days off, and technically he's entitled to take time off, but it's getting exhausting and frustrating. Anything I can do to address this situation?
Yeah, have you talked to the supervisor and said that the event that has been planned requires 2 bodies? We need both people to be on.
Simple as that. See,
Communication is going to solve most of your problems. Go. Faster.
Faster! I have a staff member who randomly mentioned to her manager that she has bumps and thinks she may have gotten bed bugs while shelving. Would like some guidance on this if possible, if you've handled this or had an infestation on the job.
Oh boy, how
Extra info! She's outdoorsy and mentioned to me yesterday how she went hiking and she thought she got bit. We haven't seen any bed bugs recently. Knowing this, how would you change your approach?
Well, have your policy first. Remember, it's this. Okay. You've got to keep your collection safe, and you have to keep your other employees safe. There is such a thing as pest control, and that should be going regularly through the building.
As a regular utility.
As a regular cost, just like your phone, nowadays we need that. You can have them come and they can do an inspection and determine, are these bed bug bites that she's getting, or do you have fleas? Because that can happen too. That needs to be determined. She could probably go to the county health and get someone to say, yeah, that's not bed bug. Those are mosquito bites or, whatever it is. Lots of different bits and pieces to that one, but essentially that needs to be looked at and taken very seriously because it's a health concern.
I have a staff member, and literally every single time I get up to ask a question, he's not in his office or out on the public floor. I left early the other day at 4 p.m. and saw him walking back to the library. He does live 5 minutes away, so it's conceivable that he ran home for something. But I'm seriously starting to question where he is most of the day. It's been several weeks that this disappearing has been happening. I don't want to micromanage, but...
No, so this is the supervisor and that's the staff member.
Correct.
It's not micromanaging to make sure your people are doing the job they're being paid to do. It's micromanaging if you're telling them you're holding those scissors wrong when you cut out that circle. We are paid with public tax dollars. It is our responsibility to make sure those dollars are paid well. A simple conversation. Hey, I went looking for you and I couldn't find you. Hey, I left early and saw you walking home. What's going on? Are you willing to share with me? Maybe he has a new puppy, needs to let the puppy out to go potty. Maybe he has a sick parent at home or a sick child. Talk to them, be a human. Talk to them and find out what's going on.
And maybe
offer accommodations that are reasonable.
And maybe they made an agreement with someone that was above their pay grade.
They didn't, because the answers didn't come
Because
from them.
in our building, people ask me stuff because they know I'll ask her stuff, but she'll say, I've already taken care of that. And then I just go back to the person saying, Gail's taking care of that. If there's something she needs us to know, she's gonna tell us.
Yeah.
All right, ready?
Go.
Library staff member, longtime employee. Library adopts a new circulation system. When no other staff are present, this staff member continues to open up the
Old
tab
one.
from the old system.
Remove the old one from the computers. If it's there, they're going to use it because it's within their comfort zone. Make sure they're trained on the new one and get rid of the old one. If they're not able or willing to learn the new system, it could very well be time for them to realize this is not the job for them at this time in life.
Staff member is frequently sick and calls in. Ironically, it most often occurs when they are scheduled to present a story time. Other staff are annoyed and when they have to cover the session or face the public because they have to cancel.
This is a tricky one because the staff member is creating extra work for everybody else. That creates a hostile work environment, which is against the law. You can't allow that to happen. You need to have a serious conversation with the staff member that keeps calling in sick. Maybe they truly are sick. Maybe they have a chronic illness. I don't know. And you might not learn that as well. Maybe the staff member will share that with you. That will give you more guidance on how to handle any situation. Conversations. Talk to people. I think we have time for one more.
Oh, I got 3. You're going to give kids to go. Library staff member reapplies for their old position at work. They were not, they were eligible for rehire when they left, but this staff member was often seen as providing commentary over the circulation desk to include statements like, "That's Harry Potter, do you think your mom would want you reading that?"
That's her real life situation. It depends
She
on
forgot
if they
how
are.
many of these last ones were hers.
It depends. If they really are a good fit for the job as it needs to be done now, then you could hire them, but you would definitely say these types of comments are not acceptable in the library. We don't talk about what someone is choosing to read. You need to talk to me. I'll touch base with you on a regular basis to see if that's something you're able to do. If it's not, we're going to have to reconsider your employment.
You ready for a really good one?
Yep.
Librarian contacts CKLS and says, "Me and my staff have not gotten paid."
Oh, this is a real one. Yeah, okay. It is against the law for you not to get paid for your work. If you were told you would get paid on the 30th, you better be paid on the 30th. Your board does not realize that they are violating federal labor laws, and the big hammer of John Law will come down on them. It doesn't matter if they are volunteer board members or not. This is a problem. Library staff are to be paid for the hours they actually work. Cutting out circles, you're getting paid. Now, you may want to find out if you're authorized to have that 1 hour at home a week to cut out circles. That would be a different agreement in writing, not a verbal conversation. Department of Labor laws exist to protect us.
Story Lady says, "God bless you," as she says goodbye to children each week.
Right? Okay. So Melanie knows that I'm not well, and she was pleased to see me looking so awesome. And she said, "I'm praying for you." It was just a quiet aside. Neither one of us were in a public situation. She knows that I welcome that. That's acceptable at work. It's acceptable to say, "God bless you," if you sneeze. But it's not acceptable to say, "God loves you and so do I." Even if that's what you personally believe, your taxes are not paid. So that means the money that you earn by everyone who thinks the same way you do. Do you know what I'm saying here? In my town, we don't have a synagogue, nor do we have a temple. That would lead me, a mosque, that would lead me to think that everybody in my town believes the same way I do, but I know they don't. I have my beliefs, and you have your beliefs, and when we're at work, we don't share those. If someone asks me across the desk how I voted, I just say I'm not allowed to discuss that. You might want to catch me when I'm at the bar on Friday. So, Mary, we'll keep talking forever.
So I'm gonna leave you with one opportunity for some input. Okay, we played these library ethics games, and we recently added an opportunity for the audience to pop up with wrong answers only.
You can only give a wrong answer.
So the storytime lady, writer storytime lady says, "God bless you" to each child, and she says goodbye each week. What are some wrong answers to how to handle this situation? I'm sure Liz has one. Come on, Liz.
I'll see you at church next week.
That's exactly where I was going. Oh, you're invited out to my church next week.
I have some information for you to read. You realize very easily it can roll, but it's that reminder that the person on the other side is coming from somewhere too. And I've got to take my thoughts, beliefs, all of those things, and I'm not tamping them down, I'm still Patty.
But you have to
But I'm here
present
to
a neutral
serve.
face to the public.
Whoa, it's very big. That's way too much.
I wish my brain were that big. It is not.
At the end of the slideshow, there are our resources that include the things that we've talked about, as well as our, what we call a LibGuide, which is just see sample policies there. You see a listing that say CKLS, libguides.com. Notes on policies are in there as well. And then the next click should be the Department of Labor. This is the full text of the
With
criminal
reasons.
versus Europolice case. An example of truly vetted by multiple lawyers, New York State Library. You don't really get much bigger than that. Your federal and Kansas labor law posters. And some of these slides were borrowed from a presentation that we saw at ARSL last year.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job. You have each other, don't forget, because sometimes the librarian down the road is the one that's open. If Mary's not available or her staff's not available, call the librarian down the road because you know you have the similarities.
And if you don't have the policies that we recommend, speak to your board and you say,
It's a
these
start.
are the 3 that I recommend we get in place this year. There you go. Baby steps.
And have fun, because this is great.